Hey, Tom here from the Run Testers, and welcome to the September monthly podcast. This episode of the podcast is going to be a bit of a bumper edition because we have quite a lot to talk about. A lot of the Run Testers are doing marathons over the autumn, so we've got a lot of kit to talk about that we're using in those marathons, as well as the training and prep we're doing for those races. At the point of recording this, Nick was just about to head out to do the Berlin Marathon. He's now finished the Berlin Marathon with an amazing PB of 2 hours, 28 minutes and 34 seconds. So it might be interesting to listen to what his thoughts are on the race before in this podcast, knowing what time he actually ended up with. We've also got Kieran back after his big challenge over in the Danube. He will be doing an interview with me talking about all the things that happened over the course of that 2 and a bit months and going through all of the things that were good and not so good about it. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Tracksmith. If you keep listening to the podcast, you're going to find out some very interesting news about Tracksmith finally coming to London, as well as a great offer for listeners and viewers of the podcast to take advantage of. Right, let's jump in and do the podcast. Okay, guys, the fourth Run Testers podcast, and I think it's safe to say that we've been quite busy this month because we've all got marathons coming up. In fact, by the time this podcast goes out, I think, Nick, you'll have done your marathon.
Yeah, Berlin this weekend, travelling out tomorrow. Just spoke to my coach, got my race plan. Maranoia is in full swing. I woke up with some bizarre, horrendous back pain this morning. I've had phantom knee pains, all the things the body does to try and make marathons a bit fun, but I can now sit without wincing. So the back thing must have just been sleeping in a funny position, I think.
That doesn't sound ideal. You always seem to have a problem just for a marathon. I think it's the stress gets to you.
No, I think it's the body just starts recovering. That's why I'm always paranoid about getting ill because I'm not running so much. But this morning, my back hurt so much. I knew it was going to go away, but I was walking my daughter to nursery and she was holding the arm on the side where my back was hurting. And she kept going, "Daddy, look at this." And jumping up and down to set off her flashing shoes, yanking my arm and my back. And I was like, oh, Alba, I don't need this right now. But it's feeling okay now. I'm more positive. My shoes are meant to be arriving soon for the race, so that's exciting.
Exciting. What shoes?
Going to go Vaporflies in the end. Massive about face. It's not my favourite marathon shoe, as I've said before, but like I say, it's the one that's felt the best in recent weeks. With just the lower drop shoes have been the Alphafly was the one I was going to use, but the lower drop shoes seems to have been aggravating a bit of a calf thing. And I haven't really got a niggle or an injury, but the Vaporfly has felt more natural to me in the last couple of weeks. I've just decided to go with my gut on that. So got some nice orange ones on.
Glad you finally made a decision because, frankly, I'm bored of your debate going on for the past 2 months.
Could still change it by the end of this podcast. I mean, they might not arrive and I leave tomorrow, so then they'll be back into panic mode, won't it?
I can't handle that. At least you're out of the country, so I won't hear much about it. Yeah. So how are you feeling about Berlin? At the point of recording this, you've got 3 days to go until heading to the start line. How are you feeling?
I feel really good. I'm not really going out for a very aggressive set time. I'm going out for a PB. I've got a very conservative start to the race in the first 10K. It's the classic thing my coach does. You kind of ease through the gears, which I think is a very good way to do the marathon because you can make up so much time in the last 10K of a marathon if you feel good. So yeah, plans to that, ease into the race. I'm doing 3K splits. That's my new way of running marathons where I just pace a 3K split so I don't get too bogged down looking at the watch every lap kind of thing. I feel quite good. I'm going to go in, kind of kick off around 340, ease down to 330 per K in the first 10K-ish and try and, move towards 325 a K but sit around there until 30K and then go for it last 12K or try and hold on or fall apart. You never really know, do you? But I'm hoping for a nice PB and a very good week out and a very good few days out in Berlin, either way.
Well, for once, I know what you're talking about with marathon plans. Normally, I just glaze over when you start talking about your detailed marathon pacing strategies.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get some proper maranoia the week before your marathon this time because you've actually trained. It won't be the case. You won't be like the Tom of old, like nipping to the local McDonald's, finding all the exciting local McDonald's.
I'm already getting it. I'm already getting. I'm sort of lying in bed at night thinking, "Oh my, what do I do? What should I do at that kilometre?"
Seriously, now when you've invested a lot of training time in, you want to do well on the day. But at the same time,
I hate it. I
have blown up in marathons, having gone very hard and trained very hard for them, and it's not gone late. But I've still enjoyed them very nearly as much. So that's the beauty of marathon. You still have a good time, and you come out feeling pretty happy, I find. So I'm not really worried about it.
So not really thinking about London yet?
London is just going to be a party for me. I can't wait for London because there's all the stuff in the build-up here. That's the nice thing about Berlin is you're not wrapped up in the build-up. London is very intense because everyone's talking about it. Everything's going on. You're going to events all the time as a journalist. Berlin's very quiet. It's just by myself. I'm going to go out and do it and then just really enjoy the London atmosphere and then run quite relaxed with Jill and maybe a couple other people and have a good time.
And is it run tester vest or are you using club colours?
Club vest.
Right.
I'll have my run tester vest on for shakeouts. Clubs, I have to wear my club vest at London because I've got a championship place. But Berlin will be my club vest as well. I think you've got to rep your club on the big day. But I've also got pretty nice new singlet I'll probably wear around Berlin as well from the Tracksmith range. But club vest on the day, always.
All right, that's enough from you. Mike, you've not been on the podcast for a while, so people are probably desperate to hear what you're up to. Go on, hit us with the current race plans or whatever you're doing.
So obviously I have got Chicago, like yourself, Tom. I had to I'm on the same plan as Tom as well. Obviously the One Track app, which is kind of being run by kind of Steph Twell. Had to take a break from it, got COVID again, so that kind of knocked me out, I think probably three and a half weeks. So I've been able to resume that kind of training. Know that I can I've had to adapt to what I want to do for Chicago, but I know I'm getting back up to the mileage that I need to be. I might have to adopt the Tom Wheatley plan and just go and eat McDonald's and try that.
Great plan. Great plan. Tried and tested.
So yeah, and it's been good. It's been good. I feel a lot more confident in terms of, ultimately being to achieve a distance, get a decent time. I probably won't go as quick as I kind of want to. If I'd kind of fully kind of followed the plan, I've been able to, but it's been good to resume the plan actually. I have actually enjoyed it up until the point I had to kind of drop out for it for a bit, but it's been good, and it's probably the toughest kind of plan that I've used, but actually overall I've actually really enjoyed having the kind of regular kind of very kind of intense sessions, but I think intense sessions are ultimately going to pay off. Yeah, that's kind of what I've got. Obviously we've got myself and you, Tom, we are doing the Loch Ness 10K, which is a week before Chicago, which people probably wouldn't think was a smart thing to do, but I won't be going all out on that, but I'm actually looking forward to going out. I did the marathon a few years ago with Nick and Kieran, and yeah, looking forward to doing the shorter one, and just kind of, I haven't raced for a long time, so it'd be interesting to just see where my race legs are really from that point of view.
Great marathon. Who was the fastest non-Kenyan that year, Mike?
I don't think anybody cared. No. Definitely not worth mentioning, is it?
I was going to say, go look up the results. Loch Ness.
People don't have time for that. No, people don't have time for that. No interest. They know who the winner was. That's fine. Tick in the box. So, Mike, you're not a man to put times down because you don't like setting yourself a goal. Have you got a time in mind for Chicago, or are you just seeing how it goes?
Yeah, I think I see it goes. Get out on the start line. I think I'll quickly get a sense of where I'm at. Like I say, I'm playing kind of catch up in terms of, I think the mileage is kind of getting there, but the speed at kind of marathon distance, I'm not 100% sure where I'm at. So I had an idea of maybe going 3:10 when I was kind of starting that training. I'm going to have to it's definitely not going to be that, but if I can get around towards what I got for Brighton and Berlin, so that's kind of around 3:20, I'll be happy with that, but it's probably going to be a little bit slower than that, but I'll be absolutely fine to get around in the time. And I've kind of been deciding between what shoes I want to use, and which has been interesting for me because I thought I would be absolutely nailed on for the Metaspeed Sky Plus, but I think actually I've just done one of my longer runs in that shoe, and I think just because I'm not quite at my kind of usual marathon pace, and I find it a little bit more unstable in terms of when I have to slow down a little bit, I think I'm probably going to go with the Endorphin Pro 3 just because I think it works a little bit better if I have to kind of rein it in a little bit. But also just got
to copy me, haven't you?
Well, I've done I was definitely tossing up between those two shoes, and I think if I was kind of fully fit, I think I actually would still go for the Sky Plus. But I think in terms of what I'm feeling for Chicago, I'm going to go with the Pro 3. I think I'm still going to have a good race in those shoes, and I think it will just suit me better in terms of how I'm going to approach the race.
And now we turn to the local legend of Brighton, Tom Whitley, who has been sending us
multiple local legend
of his Strava, the little park he runs around constantly. He's adopted the full Nick approach here of little laps. a million local legends you've got there, Tom.
I've got about 15, but it's growing. I got a couple more last night. And I'm not. Nobody's really messaged me to congratulate on or say I'm a local legend, which is Ian's
What
odd.
is the Brighton's local paper? Are they going to be? Are you in that? From
The Argus. Oh, I should imagine it'll pop up sometime soon.
ordered you-
Multi-local legend. It's yeah.
I've kudos.
I'm getting quite a lot of kudos recently. People are really starting to buy into my one lap course of training. I'm getting a bit bored of running laps of parks at the moment. It's impossible in Brighton to train for a marathon because there's either big hills or it's the summer and there's too many people to run down the coast. So I've just gone around the park time and time again because it's the only time I can do consistent pace training. But yes, I am feeling pretty good. I am going for a sub 3 at Chicago, as you well know. Feeling pretty confident about it. You and me did the Pleshy half over in Essex last 2 weeks ago now, I think, Nick. And I got my fancy new 1 hour 23 minute PB.
Fantastic PB. I was very excited. I saw you at the finish line. He looked a bit wrecked. He looked a little bit angry, and I thought, has he not had a good race? I didn't know what the time was. You were just so pumped with how fast you'd run. I mean, Tom always looks angry. You know, rain or shine, happy, sad. He always looks a bit angry. But
I'm more after a few beers, but normally when I'm doing running,
you were smiling in the pictures after. So
there was a guy running next to me who was trying to overtake me. Did a sprint finish, and he couldn't quite do it, so I was just laughing because I was
smiling at someone else's misfortune, Mike. Obviously,
I was, I was enjoying that. That's it's because I got to the end of that race, and I actually did feel pretty good. I think I could have gone on for longer, so I was pretty chuffed by the end of it. So I was odd occasion where I'm smiling in a picture.
It's all sides. I mean, Tom, you can very much run a sub 3, but it's going to be waylaid by the fact you are going to try and set PBs at every distance along the way and refuse to accept that's not. I'm not. Strategy.
I've got a strategy. I've got a strategy now. I've been mulling it over every night because the Pleshy half pace I went for, I was going to go for a 1:26 in that race. I was just trying to get a PB, but every K I just added went a little bit faster just to test it out. And it worked. So I think I'm going to probably go out at 4:10 minute kilometres, but try and get it a little bit lower than that.
You in the pro free,
4:10 till 30k at least. Race doesn't start till 30k.
Yeah, but I haven't got your endurance, so I'll get to 30k at that pace, and I'll just start getting tired, even if I'm at 5 minutes.
Less tired. You have got you've done more long runs than me this cycle, probably.
Look, my strength is my sheer persistence and pain threshold. That's what I got. That's what I've got to play with. And I'm also going to be scared the whole way looking back to see if Mike's catching up with me.
That would be funny after all this training. God. Whew.
Yeah, he'll do it just to play mind games. He'll blow himself out at the first 5k just to annoy me.
Who's that in the pink shoes? I know who that is in the pink shoes.
Same pink shoes as me. Yeah.
Pink shoes, teal vest.
I was looking at then of course Loch Ness, and I think what I was going to do in Loch Ness is just do marathon pace and maybe slightly increase it throughout, just see how I feel. Ideally, I want to get to the end of Loch Ness 10k feeling quite comfortable and going, that was fine, not a problem. I could easily maintain that.
I have many objections to this Loch Ness trip. Travelling right now, it's cold's going round, and even if it doesn't feel that comfortable, you got to remember that your body knows when the end of a race is coming. So it will go, there's only 2k left. I'm starting to feel a bit tired. It always happens. So even if you go, that feels weird. It doesn't feel like I can maintain that for a marathon. Actually comes to the day, it's a different matter. You've tapered, your body will have different you'll have different mental expectations, and that does translate to physical tiredness for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm ignoring you.
I respect.
I'm not interested.
I respect Nick's thoughts on this, but ultimately I want that can of soup, so I will be.
I've
instantly ignored anything Nick said and just thought about a can of soup now, which is I think
as a Loch Ness podium man, it's hard to say.
Look, if I get to Loch Ness and see any sort of evidence of you coming second in it, I will bow my head and do a social post about it, but I have a feeling that nobody's going to mention it.
I don't know if the statue's finished yet. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's enough updates on our training. Let's jump into a fact.
Jump right in.
And this is, I've got a couple of facts here. They're sort of joined up, but they're so pointless that I thought I'd better do two just to get your money's worth. So apparently 3 animals that are slower than humans are an elephant, a squirrel, and a domestic pig. Any thoughts on that? That doesn't really mean anything, does it?
No. Which is the slowest?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I can't outrun a squirrel over 10 metres.
Yeah, it really depends on the distance. We're built for long distances. We can outrun a cheetah over 5 miles, I imagine.
Yeah, so we're faster than any animal if you sort of account for
not birds.
Rules. Yeah, but you wouldn't let a bird fly, would you? You'd have to walk. Running,
oh yeah, it's faster than birds walking. I'd really back myself against a bird made to walk.
Chickens look pretty nippy. Right, and then a second part to this fact is animals that are faster than humans. I don't know I think the person who's come up with this fact is quite biased. Are a rabbit, a cat, and a kangaroo.
Not my cat.
I don't think it's cat and your cat. Your cat is quite fast once every 2 months when it does something.
Taz occasionally does see something she thinks she has to interact with, and then will sprint across the. But when she starts running too fast, her back legs start coming past her front legs because she's so ungainly and chubby. So she can't run. Basically, eventually, will just turn in a complete circle because she's so bad at running. So yeah, you can take Taz in any kind of distance. I'd say.
And then she takes 2 months off to relax.
Yeah. She's very good at rest and recovery. Yeah.
The other thing about that fact is, I don't know why they've specified domestic rabbit. A non-domestic rabbit's quite slow.
Surely they're faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Domestic rabbits don't ever move, as far as I can tell.
Okay, another one of those later. Right, let's talk running news. Mainly kit this month because there's not a lot of news that we've been that interested in. I suppose in terms of races, the biggest thing that happened our side of the world was the Big Half. I knew a lot of people that took part in the Big Half this year. I've never done it. But of course, Ailish and Mo Farah, they were the 2 winners of it. Annoyingly, Ailish isn't doing London this year. I was quite looking forward to seeing her take on London, but that's not happening. But Mo is doing it. How do we think Mo is going to do at this London Marathon?
I really don't know. Is that okay?
Thanks for your insights, Nick.
Next.
It was really impressive at the Big Half. Really impressive how he was running with Tracksmith. I think he's in a big, bulky training block and wasn't tapering for the race, but he's still in absurd form the last couple of years. And Farah did drop them really nice, really comfortably. Like I said, shame not to see Ailish. It's all down to not being able to fuel. Do you know that? Really struggling to fuel on runs, so half is the top she can go because she doesn't have to fuel.
Well, I can give her lots of tips on that.
Yeah, but I mean, Farah's not going to be among the favourites at all, obviously, for London because big names are coming over, and he's never quite hit the absolute peaks in the marathon. He's done some amazing. He's obviously won Chicago, and he's done an amazing time, but he's a bit older now. So I don't know. I think it's just a lovely chance to see him run around London, give him a big cheer. Obviously, had quite a turbulent year with the revelations about his past and that. So it'd be, I think, a very enjoyable event for him. But I'm not sure he's in winning form at London.
Yeah, as you say, always a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened of the month, which is close to the podcast, is UTMB. Mike, you were out there not doing the UTMB, but just relaxing and occasionally doing a little bit of a run. So we had Tom Evans on in the podcast last episode, and this was before he ran UTMB. He had no idea how he was going to do. Nobody had any idea because he fairly recently came back from injury, just started doing pretty well in events again, but it was a completely new race for him to take part in, and he came third in it, which was absolutely incredible to see, behind Kieran and Mathieu Blanchard. So yeah, big news for that. So if you want to listen to what Tom had to say about his pre-planning for that event, then you can go back to the last episode and find out how he thought he'd do, because he wasn't entirely sure. So it's quite interesting to listen to. Right, let's talk a little bit. There's a few products that sort of popped up this month. One really important one, which we'll go into more depth to in the different gear section, but the Apple Watch Ultra, big release for Apple. You guys have been having a look at this.
It's definitely big. I mean, obviously, it is technically the biggest Apple Watch that we've had. It's they're very much pitching it at kind of endurance athletes, runners, kind of outdoor kind of lovers ultimately. So yeah, it's myself and Nick and Kieran have all been testing it. We've kind of shared our kind of early impressions after some running with it, which is up on the channel now. And I think for me, it's been interesting that Apple has gone down the street. They're obviously looking at what Garmin is doing in this space, having definitely trying to tackle Garmin on this front. I think kind of for me, it's an interesting one that they've gone for this market ultimately. I guess we're going to go dig into it a bit more into
I'll stop you there so that we can to make people listen to the rest of the podcast to find out more about it. In different gear, we'll delve into the details of your testing, just to see if it's worth taking a look at. And then we've got the new Stride pod as well. I know nothing about this.
Yeah, well, I think this is quite interesting. I think the timing of this is very interesting, basically, in terms of what Apple have kind of launched themselves. And obviously, people are familiar with Stride. It's kind of a foot running pod. I think the key things here that's new from this device is that it's claiming it's going to be more responsive in terms of tracking your running power. So, give you that kind of most accurate, most, reliable kind of running power metric. I think another thing that I found quite interesting is it's saying it can kind of measure kind of lower kind of body stress, which is something a bit similar to what, we've started to with Polar, kind of claiming that it would kind of look a bit more your kind of, your kind of physical fitness and trying to give you a sense of how your body is recovering or, to kind of heavy load from your kind of big running session. So I think that's a really kind of interesting direction that they're going with this, as long with, giving you all those kind of metrics you expect from a kind of Stride pod, and also kind of improving the design. I think it's the timing of them doing a new one definitely feels kind of connected to Apple kind of releasing some features around kind of advanced running metrics and running power as well.
I think it's be interesting for Stride, because I think the two things they really sold a lot of units and were known for was obviously running power, which lots of places are now doing from the wrist natively, and it might not be quite as spot on accurate, but it is a subjective measure anyway, so you can use it from different brands. And then pacing, the accuracy was always brilliant from Stride, but I think a lot of dual band GPS devices out there, even for a nutter like me who's really obsessed with pacing GPS, are good enough now. So I do think they are going to have to expand their niche a little bit, like you say, to try and win a new audience, because watches have kind of caught up to things that they were doing very well before them.
Definitely.
And you guys are testing this at the moment, or you're just waiting?
We will be getting it in.
Looked at it.
We'll be chasing it. I'm chasing it to get one in to have a look. So I definitely think it's one that I'm probably going to look to test at Chicago against the Apple Watch, and kind of look at how those kind of extra new metrics kind of match up, really.
It sounds like you've got busy time in Chicago, Mike. I'm not even going to. I always run with my phone in my belt. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and shave off any weight I can. So I'm hoping you're taking your phone with you. All right, let's finish this section with another running fact. This is I don't even know where this comes from. Researchers,
you have to have faith in these facts, because we haven't got faith in them. You've got to be there.
No, I'm hoping one time I'm gonna say one. You're gonna be like, "That's fantastic. That's definitely true." It's never gonna happen, is it? Researchers have found that the majority of runners will straighten up when an attractive runner of the opposite sex is coming towards them. A lot of issues with this fact.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. That is a tremendous running fact.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to know how they did that, how they decided, because they must have had to set up the attractive person, the people that were doing the running, where they were running, how they run, because some people probably run quite straight anyway. Yeah.
I mean, this sounds like gobbledygook, if I'm honest, Tom.
I mean, it sounds fantastic to me.
I mean,
there's a documentary on it.
I'm going to counterintuitive, I guess.
Well, it says researchers have done it, so it must be somebody somewhere must have done something with some level of integrity. But it also would suggest that there's a study that exists for that. So I say I'll delve into it. I don't delve into these facts. I don't want to go into any more detail with them.
Want to print out and read on the flight to Chicago, maybe.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll get some interesting looks from people sat next to me on that one. Okay, another one of those later. If you're into running, and it's fairly likely that you are if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard of Tracksmith. And Tracksmith is a brand that makes some really nice running kit. It's an independent running brand that hails from Boston in the US. And that does mean that for us UK runners, it can be tricky to check out the kit and find out what it is you want to buy without just looking at the website. Luckily, that's all about to change. Tracksmith are heading over to the UK to set up shop in London, and they're going to be kicking that off with a pop-up that runs from the 30th of September to the 7th of October to coincide with London Marathon. But there's much more to it than that, because Tracksmith are going to be running a series of activations that run across the course of the week for runners that want to find out more about Tracksmith or join in the community. And there are some pretty impressive things that you can take part in over at the pop-up. If you click in the link below, you can find out more about those events happening. And if that's not enough, we've got a great offer from Tracksmith for anyone listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube. If you head over to tracksmith.com/runtesters22, you'll get a free navy Van Cornlet singlet if you spend over $150 on the website. So if you click on the link below, you can have a look at the terms and conditions of that offer and get yourself a fantastic piece of race kit for future races coming up. Right, back to the podcast. So, Kieran, welcome back to the UK after... well, let's start by just telling everyone how long you've been out there and what distance you did.
Yeah, so I think I've been away for, the run was actually about 67 days, but I think in total I was away for sort of 70 to sort of 74, 75 days. And in that time, I basically did the equivalent of probably, I think it breaks down to sort of 28 miles a day for the 67 days. So an average of a marathon distance or so every single day for that. The truth was that some of the days when I was doing this run along the Danube, from the sea in Romania to the source in Germany, through 8 countries, through 4 capital cities, I actually ended up doing some runs that were smaller. My shortest run was 11 miles. My longest run, I think, was 44 and a half, if I've got the numbers right. So I feel like I've been away for forever. I'm just remembering how to be a normal human being again.
Yeah, I was expecting you to take at least half an hour setting up your computer for this call. So impressed by that. So before we delve into the details of the massive Danube run, we should probably just mention the charities first, because I know we'll forget. So if we just mention it now, we can get people to sort of put some money into that and while they're listening.
Yeah, so I did it to raise money for generally kind of, it's an umbrella of sort of poverty impacted children worldwide. And within that, I decided to choose 5 different charities: Save the Children, UNICEF. There's one called Starfish Great Hearts Foundation, who do work with AIDS affected children in South Africa. Farrer, a charity that works specifically with Romanian kind of projects. And then there was a Breakfast Club charity here in the UK who give children who can't otherwise afford it food so they can go to learn at school on full bellies with their brains working better. So yeah, basically trying to do something to help the most vulnerable sort of people kind of worldwide have a kind of better chance at chasing their own dreams.
Perfect. So if you're listening to this, and if you go to the link in the podcast notes or in the caption, you'll be able to find a link to Kieran's charity page. So give generously whilst you're listening to this podcast. Okay, so let's just, I suppose, for the listeners that haven't heard about what you're doing or don't know the details of it, what exactly was the Danube Challenge?
Yeah, so I set out to basically, in a nutshell, become the first person ever to run the Danube River in Europe from the sea in Romania to the source in Germany. It's approximately, let's say, it was on paper, it was going to be around 2,000 miles. I had a window of around 70 days to do it. I left the day after my son's birthday, and I had to reach Germany and the source of the Danube, where the Danube rises, by the 30th of August for my wife's birthday, and also get back in time to return to doing all the school run duties and all those kind of things. So I was in a kind of tight window, bit of a tight time frame. Along the way, I was carrying all my own kit, everything I needed to be self-sufficient. So I had around 10 to 12 kilos on my back at any one point, a bivy sack, sleeping bag, sleeping mat, all of those things that I could have used to camp and wild camp. We'll come on to what happened with that later. And essentially just trying to cover distances anywhere between, it was anywhere between kind of 11, 12 miles up to kind of 45 miles daily, moving through Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Serbia, Hungary, Austria, Germany, and Slovakia. Not in that order.
Not quite a nice tour then. of a few countries.
All the way across Europe.
Well, listeners won't know that you've been talking about this challenge for, I think, years now. I seem to remember you talking to me about this quite a long time ago. It's always been something you've wanted to do. Why did you want to do it, and two, why now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of started. The seed was planted probably a decade or more ago. I was sat in Vienna having coffee with someone who was from Vienna with another person who was from Belgrade, two cities on the Danube. And the person from Vienna said, if I put a message in a bottle and threw it into the river, said this to the person from Belgrade, you could fish it out in 6 or 7 days' time, and this is how we could communicate. And it was just a really nice idea. This sort of idea sort of stuck in my head of this river that connects so many different countries, different people, different cultures. It's like the lifeblood of Europe. And it just stayed with me. And then, fast forward a few years, I was looking for a challenge that would really push me really way outside of my comfort zone. I'd done a few different things like the Marathon des Sables. I'd run a half marathon every day in December in 2013. I'd done a bunch of ultras, lots of city marathons, and I wanted something that was going to be a bit different. And I kept coming back to this idea of the Danube, and I Googled kind of how long is the River Danube. It came back and said about 1,700 miles or so. So I divided that by the marathon distance, and the answer I got was 67 days. And I thought, this is just the right side of crazy. I kind of say it's sort of like a possible impossible. You look at it and you go, I don't know if I can do it, and it will be hellish difficult, but it's actually not beyond the realms of possibility. And then after a bit more research, I realized that I couldn't find any record of anyone having done it before. And that really sealed the deal for me, the idea that I could do, there was a chance here to do something that hasn't been done before, a world first. And also do it for charity, raise money. And it kind of ticked all the boxes, and I couldn't let the idea go. Then obviously the pandemic swept in, and I think that really kind of crystallized, gave me the impetus, because, you never know what's going to happen around the corner. And that really fired me up to set a date and go and have a crack.
So if you can remember back to before you left for the Danube, what were the things that you were most concerned about with taking on the challenge?
Well, I think the furthest I'd run before going out was I did 7 marathons in 7 days in my kind of training build up. And I didn't really know what would happen beyond 7 days to the body. So there's kind of the fear that you get overuse injuries. I was worried that the tendons would go, Achilles, the tendons down the outside of the knees into the foot, all of those kind of things just from overuse. Didn't really know how the body would respond. And then obviously there's all the kind of logistical things about kind of, have you picked routes that are safe? Are you going to be safe from humans? One of the big things that, I found in my research, there's lots and lots of reports of wild dogs and stray dog attacks and problems within kind of Romania and Bulgaria. And that was a huge fear for me about how I'd have to cope with that. I think the other thing, we're looking at through sort of Europe in this kind of midsummer, temperatures can rise as high as kind of 40 degrees. They're often well over 25. So how I would cope with the heat, could I get enough fuel on board? And I guess generally just being, most of this I'm going to go out and run solo. So I'm also thinking about, am I capable of doing this kind of on my own? It's you feel sort of quite vulnerable and quite exposed when you get out there. So I had all of these things kind of swimming around in my head. Would my kit hold up right? Would I pick the right pair of shoes? Everything sort of becomes quite important when you're setting off literally with what you're wearing and a very small amount of kit in a backpack. If all that stuff's going to work, will the backpack survive the distance? Those kind of things were big kind of things on my mind initially.
So now you've been back for a few weeks. We've sat watching Netflix loads. Looking back at the time you spent out there, what were the things that really were tough about it? So
the surprising thing for me really was after initial kind of on the first sort of 4 or 5 days, things that you would expect happened to, my feet blistered up. I've got a bit of a problem with my little toe where if I do long distances, it sort of dehoods itself, which is rank. But that started to happen on day 3. I mean, I put in big miles in the first 3 days. I think I'd done like 110 miles in the first 3 days or something. Because of the distances between places you could stay within Romania, it was quite wild and quite far apart. So I had to cover those distances. So my feet were in ruins after day 3 or 4, and I had this real kind of fear that I was going to have to head home, really, having told everyone what I was going to do really early. what actually happened, I treated those, I basically took a kit out to treat the blisters. So I would use a syringe to drain them. I use iodine or a thing called Friar's Balsam to clean them. And I'm really meticulous about every little detail about sort of treating problems really early. And after the 5 or 6, 7 days, everything really kind of settled down. And the surprising thing from then on in was really how well the body coped, not only with the distances that I was putting in, but from that kind of impact on much of what I was running was quite hard compacted ground or tarmac. And the physicality of it actually was far easier than the psychological factors that came in with initially in Romania, basically dealing with wild dogs. I encountered many sort of stray dogs within the towns and in the wild, a mixture of farm dogs, stray dogs, and also guard dogs that weren't chained and are basically trained to be super aggressive. So for much of the early part of Romania, I felt like I was running on high alert in fear. It was, and I hadn't really expected that to be as difficult as it was. It was actually psychologically really, really hard. It's very, very draining emotionally if you're running through towns, and every time you get to a town, you have to stop. You have to walk through the town. You're looking at all the gates. You're looking to check what dogs might come from where and whether or not they're going to be aggressive or not. When you're surrounded by them, most of them weren't a problem, but on a couple of occasions I had some quite serious encounters, and it just leaves you feeling drained at the end of the day. So I think that was a bit of a surprise for me, feeling in danger, basically. I hadn't really expected to feel in danger, certainly not, from animals.
Do you remember the point where that fear disappeared? Was there a point where you thought, well, I'm clearly safe now?
Yeah, I think when I crossed over across the border from Bulgaria into Serbia, initially I met lots of people at this amazing campsite who were cycling. I was running upstream, so I went from the sea to the source. Most people do this on bikes. There's lots of cycle tourists who do the first leg, basically between Germany and Serbia. Not so many people go on to the sea. But I met lots of people who had come downstream, and I asked them, the first question I was asking was like, what are the dogs like in Serbia? And many of them said, well, they're just as bad. But having run sort of 3 or 4 of the stages in Serbia, I realized this problem, it didn't go away completely, but it calmed down, it quietened down. And as you went further west, there were still dogs, but many of them were behind gates. And yeah, I remember kind of running through Serbia, and Serbia was a mixture of fewer dogs, I think nicer trails that were close to the river. And then I had this amazing hospitality and kind of kindness from strangers in Serbia that by the time I left Serbia, I felt like a completely different runner. I felt much more relaxed. And then as you kind of head further west, you could even, I didn't listen to music for the first sort of 4 weeks in the early countries because I didn't feel safe doing so. Further up, that became a possibility.
Cool. Well, let's move away from the negative aspects of it. Let's talk about the high points. What things happened on the journey, or what points of the journey did you really think this is fantastic? This is an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, I think throughout, really. Although there was obviously negatives in Romania with the dogs and that, there were still moments that were wonderful. There's lots of wonderful views. There were times when I was waking up. I got into a rhythm of waking up at 4 a.m. I would have my breakfast. I'd basically leave wherever I was staying by 6 and start running in order to beat the midday heat. I basically had to try and get done by 1 or 2 o'clock before you started to hit kind of 35 degrees. And I got into this really lovely rhythm. And it often meant that I was out, even running main roads through sunflower fields and these big mass agricultural kind of plantations of wheat and sunflowers everywhere in those early days. But I get the sunrises in these places all to myself. And you literally felt like, the only person traveling through. And it was really, really magical. And I guess those moments of beauty were found all the way up through the river. There were real highs of running through the Iron Gates and the Đerdap National Park in Serbia, which is where the river narrows to its kind of, it shrinks to its narrowest point and its deepest point. And so it's just this kind of beautiful, epic landscapes. But I think really if there's one sort of standout thing that I take from all the way along, it's these moments where strangers came out and just did something for me, often kind of completely unplanned. These moments of kindness, whether it was I had kind of Romanian truck drivers handing me 2 litres of water out of their cabs, or I had people handing me, fruit sellers from the side of the road handing me peaches, and as I ran past as if it's like a marathon aid station. And then a couple of times I had runners who had found me on Instagram, and they just arrived on the side of the road. You know, I had one guy, Dimitar in Bulgaria, who arrived. I was having the worst day, and his timing of his arrival on the side of the road, you know, he pulled up in a car ahead of me, got out, and I saw this guy just walking back towards me. My initial thought was, oh God, what's going to happen here? And I looked a bit closer, and he was waving something, and I saw it was a bottle of water. And I realized that he was a runner, and he just found me on the side of the road, came with water, Haribo, and then ended up crewing me for 4 days with a car through Bulgaria and helping me over some of the biggest and most difficult mileage. He was also a big comfort because he was local. He knew a bit more how to deal with the dogs. You know, throw that forward, I had a similar experience in Serbia with a guy called Milos, who came out and crewed me for 3 or 4 days in northern Serbia. Let me stay, you know, he invited me back to stay with his family. They fed me, you know, they washed my kit. They gave me a bed to stay for the night and just made me feel like I was a member of their family. And it was wonderful. And there's all these moments that, you know, the foundations of this whole run are built on those acts of kindness. There's no way I look back. I think I don't make the distance, particularly some real kind of key timing points that these people arrived to offer me the support that were crucial. You know, it was made a difference between me making it and not. And it was just wonderful to have this sort of chain of kind of friendliness and kindness all the way up along the river.
Amazing. Definitely probably preferential to running across some sort of unpopulated outback where there's no people at all. At least you've got something to keep you going.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about fueling. I saw a lot of social posts while you're out there with some quite questionable fueling strategies going on. And for the listeners, Kieran's fueling is normally very, very like planned out. You know exactly the sort of fuel you want. How did you feel? What did you feel like having to sort of scrape around trying to find substitute fueling solutions for your run?
Yeah, I mean, I could only carry so much. So I had some fuel, which was kind of classic kind of running fuel, I had sort of from Precision Fuel and Hydration. I had some of their chews, which are easy and sort of portable. I had some 33 shakes, which I relied on for replacement breakfast because there was times I couldn't find breakfast easily in the morning if things were shut or whatever. But I could only carry so much of that. So I got resupply packages sort of sent along the way and brought out, but I literally could sort of take about 2 kilos max of food. So that would run out fairly quickly. And then I would be looking in shops and petrol stations and bakeries. And I ate all sorts. I really quickly dropped into, you know, this sort of process whereby during a run, if I walked into a shop, if something caught my eye and my mind said, I fancy it, if I got a craving, I'd eat it, I'd stick it in the face. And that, so I had also like pastries, I had sort of savory pastries. I ate an awful lot of kind of fruit-filled kind of strudel type, kind of apple turnover. I had I tried different random chocolate bars. One thing that I didn't realize was fizzy water. I accidentally bought a bottle early on one of the really hot days in Romania, glugged it, and for some reason, sparkling water in that kind of hot environment quenched my thirst way better than still water. And I think sometimes when you're running with still water for long periods of time, you get bored, or you get a little bit of, I don't know, I can only drink stomach so much of it. So I'd have still water in my bottles and hydration salts. And then every time I stopped at a shop, I'd grab sparkling water, or sometimes I'd do like a fruit juice and sparkling water mix to get a bit of sugar and a bit of hydration in. And that was a revelation. That really worked a treat. And I'll take that back into any ultra I do. But I mean, I ate all sorts. At one point, I stopped 17 miles into a marathon in Austria and had a full-on chicken schnitzel.
Yes, I saw that. That was quite good. I was quite jealous of that.
I mean, only because I sat at a cafe and I had a drink, and I saw other people, cyclists around me, eating them. And again, the brain just said, "Oh, I fancy that." So I thought, "Why not?"
How was that? How long did you have to run for after eating that?
I think I did about 6 or 7 miles, and I ran those 6 or 7 miles faster than I did the first set that day. So
maybe a top tip for any runners out there looking for a bit of a speed boost in training. Well, that leads me on to: is there any surprising foods or drinks that you picked up on your journey, and you just want more of it now? You've become addicted to it.
Yeah, there's the one thing that I don't think they do it here. I've not seen it, but in Austria and Germany, they do something called Apple Schorle. and it's spritzed apple juice, right? Apple juice and fizzy water, pre-bottled, pre-mixed, and it's absolute magic. Like when it just gives you that hit of sugar and that sort of hydration, and that was something I kind of became hooked on. I'd get, so at that point I sort of had some crew with me at times, and I'd get cross if they hadn't found some. When I came in, where's my apple Shirla?
Yeah.
But yeah, again, just I don't know. It just worked. It was just it hit right. So that was really good.
Nice. And let's just quickly delve into. We're not going to do all your kit because I'm sure you're going to be covering that in various ways. But let's talk about your shoes. The shoes are obviously a massive factor, and it took you a while to decide what you're going to wear. What did you go for in the end?
Yeah, I mean, after much kind of testing, I decided to go for initially with the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2, basically because I just, they're the right mix of kind of comfort and balance, and I knew they could do a bit of fast, but they can also handle slow, and I knew I wouldn't get any blisters or have too much trouble from them. I think I ended up running 800 miles or something in that first pair, and then whilst I was out on the run, the Speed 3 came out, and obviously they're a bit wider, there's a bit more cushioning, and I got some sent out, and I switched from the Speed 2 to the Speed 3, and then I ran the rest of it in 2 pairs of the Speed 3, so 3 pairs of shoes in total. I think I did the most over mileage in that 1 pair of Speed 2s, and then I did about 600 and 500 or something in the other Speed 3s. Actually, the Speed 3s were just right. They were bang on. There was just enough cushioning, a little bit more stability.
I was going to say the Speed 3s are a perfect shoe for you because you've got quite wide feet, haven't you? So it's almost like they've designed them for you. Yeah,
and it stopped. I mentioned earlier that problem I have where my toes are a bit squished together and I can sort of put a bit of pressure in the hood. In the Speed 3, I had no trouble with that. Interestingly, the Speed 2s, I'd had to do some walking during this run. When I rocked back on my heels, because the Speed 2 have got a little raised sole, it seemed to rub my heels a bit, and I was suffering more with blisters when I walked than when I ran. That also went away with the Speed 3. And from the day I put on the Speed 3, they basically just vanished on the foot. I didn't have to worry about them at all whatsoever. The durability was pretty solid as well. I mean, I've got one shoe. It's this is my second pair, and the back heels are a bit scuffed up, but these are still good to run in.
Nice. And were they the only shoes you took with you? Did you have any sort of walking shoes or comfort shoes with you?
I didn't. I had to. I basically just had to have 1 pair at a time, which meant the worst part of that is that because your socks, the shoes stink, right? After they really stink. I mean, it's hotel room kind of clearing stink. And then I had 1 pair of running socks, and I had 1 pair of socks for like my evening wear socks. The minute you put the evening wear socks in those shoes, it's toast for them as well. They stink as well. So
evening wear socks sounds probably a little bit fancier than what you're probably doing in the evenings. People probably imagine you wearing a suit or something.
I literally had 1 pair of trousers. Didn't even have any pants, so I didn't take any boxer shorts. I ended up having to invest. I got in Bulgaria. I invested in what I called my Bulgarian swim shorts, which were like a cheap pair of Lotto Italian brand, kind of terrible looking shorts, which they were my kind of evening wear as well. So I went out in some questionable gear when I went to the supermarket to get my food and stuff after I'd done the run.
Have you kept them, or have they been burnt now?
No, they're still here. Everything. I've still got all my kit.
Nice.
Like all of it's. I've got all the artifacts, including I picked up a rock in Romania, which was like a rock to throw at dogs if they came and attacked you. Mm-hmm. And I ended up carrying that all the way along the Danube, and I've still got it now.
Very nice.
It's my dog rock.
All right, then let's just talk about. So you've been back for 2 or 3 weeks now.
Yeah, just over a fortnight. Yeah.
What's it been like coming back? You've been gone for quite a while. What was it like adjusting to coming back to UK life?
It's been really hard actually. The re-entry. It's taken me a while to sort of get back into kind of work mode and actually working. But even just coming back and being in the house and normal kind of family life, being a dad, going and playing football in the park and doing all of those things. My life on the Danube was so simple. All I had to think about really was myself. I'd get up and I'd move. When I'd finished doing the run, you'd get this kind of release of endorphins and happy chemicals, and you'd have these, I was tired in the afternoons, and the time went really quick. I went out there thinking I'd have loads and loads of time, But actually, by the time you'd been to the supermarket, done some social media stuff, chatted to a few family members on the phone, wandered about a bit, it was done, that you were running again. But it was a really simple existence. And I think you'd only realise how simple. I didn't have to make many decisions, really, route decisions and bits and pieces running, but afterwards, no decisions about what I was wearing or where I was going, So when you come back and all of a sudden there's this, real life comes back, it's quite you realise just how frenetic your everyday life really is. And that's been a bit tricky. Running, I've been out and I ran a marathon about a week ago. So probably I think about 11 days after I came back, I ran the New Forest Marathon. And I wanted to see, because I'd done all of this low and slow, essentially my runs were like recovery runs out there. I was running very low heart rate and I feel like I was as fit as I've ever been. So I wanted to see if I could run a quick marathon. And I went and did a 3:10 marathon on a course, which is like an off-road sort of trail course. And I think knocked about 20 minutes off my fastest time on that course. So, I just think from a point of view, it sort of changed my thoughts about what I maybe have to do in order to run quicker marathons. I think building more really kind of really slow, easy stuff into my marathon training.
Yeah,
I think it would be a smart thing.
I was going to ask you about that. Probably people listening now thinking, so to train for a marathon, I need to do a marathon a day for best part of 2 months. maybe that's a bit too far. But no, definitely, I saw that time. I was very surprised to see that actually, based on what you've been doing. But you clearly give me your legs enough time to adapt and acclimatise to all the training you've been doing. So so let's dive into the next bit, which is what's next. Are you going to focus back on races, or is there a new challenge? You must have been thinking about new challenges that you could do while you're out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I can't. My family don't want me to go anywhere for a little while, so I don't know. I mean, there's one. They've just put in the finishing touches of a cycle path around Lake Garda in Italy, which looks absolutely stunning, and it's about 100 miles around the lake. And I think at some point I would love to go and run that in 2 or 3 days or 4 days or something. Maybe do something a little bit more leisurely where you could stop off. That's one thing that's kind of got my interest. I think now, having done the New Forest Marathon, I'd quite like to put in a little bit of, interval training to get a bit of speed up and see if I can do a couple of personal bests at shorter distances. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I'm actually one commitment I've made to myself is that act of moving every day was such a powerful thing. It made me feel so good about, everything generally, that one promise I've made to myself is just that I'm going to move in the morning, and crucially, I think in the morning, every day. And whether that's running a couple miles or even walking a bit, going steady and slow, and but making sure I make time to have that movement, because I think for my mental health, and I think just my physical fitness and everything, I just think I came away from the Danube feeling like it gave me such a sort of powerful kind of platform, and I don't really want to lose that. So yeah, I think that's something I'll focus on as well.
Okay, and now you're back. Now you've had a bit of time to sort of think about everything and compartmentalize all your learnings. Is there anything, if you were to go back again and start the whole process again from planning to doing it to coming back, is there anything that you'd think, I'd definitely do that differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably wouldn't necessarily carry all the self-sufficiency kit. So my camping gear, I mean, it was nice that I had the option to camp and stop and sleep wherever I needed to. And so, carrying that I think was important for confidence. But in reality, very early on, I realized, because of the tension and the pressure during the day and running on high alert, that I needed a place of sanctuary, and having a bed in a cheap hostel, or, be it Airbnb or whatever it was, even sometimes in kind of wooden huts on campsites, was a huge deal. I needed that sanctuary. I needed that for the recovery. So I think I'd go out initially with the plan of doing that, and maybe I would, it would make sort of planning that accommodation a little easier as I went.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like the training you did beforehand, it sounds like you didn't need to do anymore. You were ready to go. You adapted as you went.
Yeah, I mean, I went in undercooked, I guess, sort of slightly underfit, and built as I went into it, and it seemed to work. It's something that I've done before when I did the Marathon des Sables, and I think there's a temptation maybe when you're doing these things that you think I should go and try and do the mileage that I'm going to do, whether you're doing like a 7-day multi-stage or, a big ultra. And actually, sometimes I think that's a bit, it puts you into those races or those challenges tired. Mm-hmm. And I kind of know that I've got the mental tools to run a marathon and get through the suffering. And I kind of knew that I'd be able to grow into it. I don't know. I think, in all honesty, Tom, I think it went as well as I could really have hoped. I feel very lucky that things didn't go wrong. If I went out and did try to do it the same again, on a fresh body, who knows, a tendon might just go. But I was lucky I was able to manage different bits that different niggles and problems that did arise. I managed to hold them. So yeah, I feel like everything, worked really well. I'm a lucky boy, really.
Yeah, definitely. There were many things that could have happened that, you seem to be going swimmingly. I think I only saw a few social posts where you were, there were some issues, but there weren't things that stopped you. You sort of delayed the distance some days, didn't you, slightly based on how you're feeling, and then moved it to the next day.
Yeah. There were some times when I knew I had to. Yeah, particularly this is where kind of people coming out and crewing me helped. If someone arrived and they had a car, all of a sudden I didn't necessarily have to make it between the two places where there was accommodation, sort of civilization. I could break that distance and we could drive back to my finishing point. And it meant at times that I could avoid doing some of the runs I had were like 44 milers, and I'd break them down over 2 or 3 days into, did 90 miles instead of in 2 days, I'd do it over 3 or whatever. There's one crucial point where I had a bit of a quad issue. And I somehow, because I had this guy, Marianne, who came out to crew in Bratislava, again, another one just appeared on the side of the road and came to help. It meant that I was able to essentially rehab quite a sort of problematic quad injury over 3 or 4 days, whilst also still running or moving 30 miles a day, which is nuts. But it meant I could stop when my legs started to hurt, get in the car and come back, So yeah, it was, at times I had to be sensible and smart about them, not necessarily sticking entirely to the plan, but it worked.
Okay, and finally, there's probably a lot of people, runners that have been watching your journey, are listening to this, thinking, I'd absolutely love to do something like that. But maybe they haven't done anything like it before. They don't really know where to start. What sort of advice would you give to would-be long distance adventure ultra runners that want to try something like this, but really are at a point where they've never experienced it before?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that you've got to realise that before I went and got into this, there's like over a decade's worth of building blocks that I've put in place to get to a point where I could even envisage going and running this. And you can't rush it. You have to put those blocks in place. And most of those actually are psychological and mental rather than necessarily even the physical. It's about how you're going to build up the tools to deal with, the suffering and the thing when things go wrong and working through pain, and all of those things come with time. So my advice is you just got to take it step by step and add little bits at a time. My challenges have been quite kind of incremental in terms of what I've done and how I've built them up to this point. And yeah, so that would be my advice. Take it steady. You've probably got time to build, and just pick off little bits at a time as you get kind of bigger and bigger in the challenges that you take on, and it will make that next step not seem quite so huge, and you'll be well prepared for it.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's covered pretty much everything. I know if you've got plenty of stuff over on the Man v Miles YouTube channel talking about each. Have you got a video for each day on the channel?
Most of them I did, yeah. So if you want to go back and relive the whole thing, there's like 67 videos, that show the sort of daily journey and how I changed throughout. And I think on for the run testers, I've got upcoming kind of stuff that I'm going to look at. I'll do a pack review of the Instinct XX pack that I took for the whole journey, which is quite a new pack that some people might not have seen. And I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison of the Speed 2 with the Speed 3s that I used over those kind of 500-600 miles as well. And so there'll be more content from sort of the kit that I used coming up on this channel as well.
Yeah, you're really pushing the durability testing to the limits there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Don't normally get that opportunity.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Well, thanks a lot, Kieran. And we will back to normal business soon when you've actually got around to testing some new shoes.
I've got big piles of shoes waiting to. Yeah, the thing is, I'm a little bit worried about. I haven't put on another pair of shoes. I can't get out my Speed 3s. I'm a little bit nervous about putting on different shoes. The pile is there, so yeah, back to business.
Should be interesting. All right then. Well, we'll catch you soon. See you later, man.
Cheers. See you later.
Right then, guys. The meat of the podcast. The bit everybody is here for, apart from the running facts. We're different gear, and we've got a lot of gear to talk about this time because we've been testing a lot of stuff that's been popping up, and some of it's very interesting. So I think the first thing the biggest thing we've done over the past month is the best carbon shoes video. So if you're listening to this, you can watch that full video, and it's a big one. I think it's about 30 minutes, 40 minutes?
50 minutes.
50 minutes of carbon shoes. Yeah, so if you're interested in carbon shoes...
And we cut a lot out as well. So.
Oh, yeah.
Please watch it, because Nick's put a lot of time into that video.
He's put a lot of time into moaning about it. The amount of WhatsApps I've had going, oh, God, I've got to do this now. Oh, I've got to do that.
If you notice any mistakes in the edit, please don't comment on them, because it was too much. I'm not a skilled videographer and editor, and I just had to get it up, and I got it up, and that's all that. Yeah. All that really matters, isn't it? It exists, and it's on YouTube.
So give us a bit of a sneak peek, Nick. What was the sort of top 3 carbon plate shoes?
Well, what this video we do is we really go through all of them, well, all the kind of top racing options from every brand, and it's we give give our opinions and talk about ones that are our favourites, but we're going to do a separate video just on our actual favourites after this marathon season, I think, to say how they went in actual races. But we really try. It's almost like a catalog. It used to be 20 minutes you go through all the carbon shoes, and it was brilliant. All the ones we tested, and we give you insights into all of them, so you know which one might suit you best. But now there are like 40-50 carbon shoes, and we did cover nearly all of them, but there are some we had to cut out, like more of the training focused ones and stuff like that. But yeah, so really we've gone through basically all the shoes, so from Nike all the way to Skechers and just everything in between, and we've given you why you should buy them or why you should avoid them, which ones are good for different types of races, different kinds of runners. Look, there's a new extended trail running section now because there's more carbon shoes in that area, so it really, hopefully, if you're thinking about buying a carbon shoe, you can go and look at just that section and get a bit more info on it, but really you should watch the whole 51-minute video to really get the true effect of it. The little sections with Tom are all filled in one stint, so you can probably notice when we started to tire towards the end. But yeah, do go watch all of it. It's really, really well edited. Yeah,
I find with carbon plate shoes, what's cropping up quite a lot at the moment, especially in the comments that we get on the channel, is people going, which is best, this shoe or this shoe? And you can't really, in the old days of 5 carbon plate shoes, you could probably say this is the best carbon plate shoe, but now they're all designed for something different, and you can't really compare like the Puma Fast Star against something that's designed like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, because they're completely different use cases, and it's almost impossible to compare the two for people who are just saying which is the best, because some people just prefer another one.
Also, our opinions will change. I also just situation shows. Like, I'm using the Vaporfly for Berlin. I don't really believe it is my best carbon shoe, but it's the one I think suiting me best right now, and suits me best in the style of runner I am. And I think there's a lot of that to consider as well. Like, I don't have problems with instability, but I've got a shuffly gait and things like that. So yeah, we try and cover off a lot of different areas like that. But I mean, if you do want a simple answer, the best one is the Vaporfly. Buy the Vaporfly. It's the cheapest probably now.
The objectively best carbon plate shoe is the Vaporfly.
Yeah, it's
the general use.
Yeah, I mean, there's now enough runners who seem to like using it that it's a pretty safe one to recommend.
All right. Well, speaking of carbon plate shoes, we've been testing and haven't finished testing yet a new one from Puma, which is the Puma Fast R Nitro Elite. I think it's just me and Nick who've got this, Mike, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I've not got that yet.
The pirate shoe.
Yes. Yeah, you're a big fan of that joke, aren't you? Says every time we bring up the shoe.
Can't help but say fast R. You can't just call it faster.
I just added in the missing bits because I'm so used to it. So that shoe, I've been doing a lot of interval sessions in it for marathon training plan, but you actually raced Pleshy Half in this shoe, didn't you, Nick?
Yeah, it's a good shoe. It's a really nice shoe. It's got a strange setup with a decoupled midsole. It's got a very snappy ride. The transition's lightning quick. You've got a firmer EVA heel section at the base that throws you onto the softer foam on the forefoot there, and I really enjoy it. I was surprised actually how comfortable it was over the half marathon. I don't think I'd go to full marathon distance myself, but as a heel striker, so I'm using probably the more of that snap, and maybe if you land more on forward on the shoe, like towards the forefoot, it's a bit more comfortable landing on that P-Bax foam. But yeah, I did think it was really good. It is probably the least versatile carbon shoe I've come across in that it is not a lot of fun to just jog around in at all. But I think as a racing shoe, it's pretty great. I think the problem is Puma's got a great racing shoe that no one's had a chance to use that much, the Deviate Nitro Elite, and that's cheaper, lighter, potentially one I'd look at first before the Fast R. How about you? You've enjoyed it though, Tom, right?
Yeah, I like it. I'm struggling to find what I'd use it for. I definitely wouldn't use it for anything over 10k. I'm fine. When I did a couple of runs in it, which were like my marathon pace. Didn't really like it for those, just because I'm so used to running in something softer, bouncier like Vaporfly or the Pro 3, Endorphin Pro 3. But since I've been using it for shorter distance stuff and intervals, and I'm a more of a midfoot to forefoot striker, especially when I'm running fast. I can really see it feels quite nice at those. I can run quite fast in it. I feel quite comfortable in it, but yeah, not versatile. And I still struggle with that heel. Even for me, I can feel it sometimes when I land, and it just feels a bit uncomfortable. It doesn't really work for me. Yeah,
it is quite stable though, that heel. So I will say that. At the moment, I've been saying this recently, I've been craving a little bit of extra stability at the moment on tired legs, and it did work very well in the Pleshy half, not going all out pace in that race.
Okay, so from carbon plate full out race shoes to cushion shoes with a little bit of stability, the Saucony Tempus, another shoe from Saucony that we've been testing quite a bit recently. I'm loving this shoe. It's one of this sort of new age of, the older stability shoes, things like the Gel Carno range and stuff. You put them on, you go running, instantly you know it's a stability shoe. And if you don't really want a high level of stability, those shoes can be a little bit hard work to run in. I think the Tempus it's got a little bit of stability. It does feel stable, but I've found it to be really good. I've been doing intervals in it and stuff while I was testing it out, and not had any issues with it. Really enjoying it.
I like it too. Yeah, I've just been mooching around in it mainly, and like I say, yeah, last few weeks of marathon training, easy runs in a stable shoe like this is great. It's not intrusive at all. The stability features, like you say, I think it is quite stable. Like it's not just like little it's not. I'm not even sure it's just like a stable neutral shoe. It almost feels more like it is a full stability shoe for people who need that, but it's softer and more fun than I expected to run in. It almost was a little bit like the kind of shoe you should run, right? All of us should just use a slightly stable shoe for general training, but you tend to gravitate to slightly more fun things like the Nova Blast or stuff like that because they're a bit more poppy and light and feel a bit more exciting underfoot. But there's no real downside to just grinding everything out in something like the Tempus, which is fun, but also just very sensible. It's a sensible shoe. It's a
sensible shoe, but I think you get a lot of comments from when it comes to stability shoes on the channel with people. I think historically, people who use stability shoes are a little bit disappointed sometimes that they can't get hold of shoes that give them the benefits of non-stability shoes. I think we're getting better. I think the Tempus is probably one of the better. I think the New Balance 86 V12 is a similar shoe. It's a very subtle level of stability. You can run in that quite nicely. I don't really notice stability elements. But I definitely think that Tempus is one of the best stability shoes I've tested for a while. And I've said this time and time again, and whenever we do a video, Saucony are just really on top of things this year. I've not had a bad shoe from them.
Yeah, I think it's great. The only downside in Tempus is it's a bit more expensive than I expected. So 160 quid, like that's a bit of a shame. But it has got some of the Power Run PB foam and all that in it. But yeah, I'd like if that price is a bit cheaper. Then it is a very good shoe for anyone to consider. But it is great in that it's bringing that stability to everyone. But so people can use it neutral runners, stability runners, everything, and it's pretty versatile.
You tried it yet, Mike?
I've got it. I haven't, but I mean, I've used the guide a lot, and I think I agree with you. I think Saucony and New Balance have really pushed out very good, I think, enjoyable stability shoes where they maybe go a little bit lighter than other stability shoes, but I think this looks like another one that's going to fit in that kind of mold as well. And it's one I'm going to use like the next couple of weeks, kind of for my easy runs up until Chicago. So I'm actually looking forward to using it as well.
Cool. All right then. So let's just jump through a few more Puma Deviate Nitro 2. Nick, what are your views on this so far?
Oh, we'll just quickly on it. I just put the review up recently. It's a very good all-rounder shoe. It's got a carbon plate in it. It's got some Puma foam, so you might think it's lightning fast, and that isn't the case. It's more of a workhorse shoe, but it's got an amazing outsole. It is fast. I've gone to the track in it. I've done sessions in it, but it's really one of the most versatile shoes I've come across, not only because of the range of paces it can handle, but the fact it's got a full Puma Grip outsole with some Puma Grip ATR at the back, which is their more trail-focused rubber. So, I've gone and done sessions on the canal towpath, that kind of thing. So it really does open up everything. You basically just head out the door and run the shoe. Like, as these kind of all-rounder trainer racers go, it's not as quick as something like the Speed 3, and it's not as light and nimble, but for training runs, it's really nice to have a shoe that you can not stress. 3 months of the year, I can go on every trail around me in this shoe, and even in winter, most things will be okay. And that's really great for what is still fairly light and speedy. So a fairly light and speedy shoe. Yeah, one to check out. I didn't like it at first, I have to say. I thought it was just a bit dull, and it's not the most exciting ride, but it does get the job done in lots of different ways.
Nice. More interesting stuff from Puma then. And then quickly, and a really interesting shoe, which a lot of people have been watching on the channel, the Kipron KD900X, an affordable carbon plate shoe.
Yeah, this is a great shoe. I really liked it till someone nicked it off me.
If you're listening, please give him his shoes back.
Give them back.
And it's so popular, I can't get another one into review yet. But I've done a couple of runs in it. It's a firmer carbon shoe. It's got a Puma foam, but Decathlon have really focused on durability. They're talking about 1,000 kilometers of life from the shoe, and that necessarily means it's going to be firmer at the start. It does break in a little bit, but I only managed to get through a couple of runs in it before, like I say, it disappeared. So I think it's going to be a really solid trainer racer, but it is fast enough to race. I did like it. I was doing a mile rep session in it, and I did enjoy that. And I've done kind of general training run. It's a firmer feel. It's a more stable feel than classic carbon shoes. I would put this up against things like the Endorphin Speed. Rather than top carbon racers, but it's £130, so it's cheaper than the Speed and cheaper than most training partner shoes, let alone full carbon shoes. It's going to be durable. It is more stable as a result of being firmer, and it is still fast. But if you're craving that super shoe feeling of explosive bounce and squishy foams, you're not getting it here. You are getting a much more traditional feel, but with some extra pop from the plate and the foam.
Okay, is there a full review up on the channel yet?
No, because I haven't managed to do any more testing, so that'll be coming down the line.
Yeah, blame the thieves for this.
Yeah,
they'll be doing the full review.
I hope so. Yeah, I'd like.
It'd be nice if that turned up. All right, Mike, you've both been testing a shoe which I haven't tested. I'm very, very angry that I've not tested it because it's like my perfect shoe by the sounds of it. But the Asics Nova Blast 3.
Yeah, will somebody send Tom a pair of Nova Blast?
Anyone send him.
Anyone.
He moans so much about not having this shoe.
I love both the Nova Blast 1 and 2, so it's like my dream shoe. By the sounds of it, is it good?
I've really liked it. I mean, I think my thoughts on the Nova. I mean, I didn't run in the original Nova Blast, but I did run the Nova Blast 2, and I did like the Nova Blast 2, but I found it was a little bit too excitable for me in terms of the runs. But
you would have liked the one then.
But I think for me, obviously, you've got a bit more of that foam in there. But I think in terms of what Asics has done with that midsole foam, it's definitely all very good. And I think, but for me, it feels a little bit more controlled when you're running. So I still think you get that kind of speedy, kind of snappy feeling from it. But I think it feels a little bit more stable for me, which I've really liked. And I've done a fair amount of running in it, and I mean, to be honest, I've enjoyed every run, and I definitely still think it fits in that criteria of being a kind of a daily train that if you want to pick up the pace and go a little bit quicker in it, you can, and it feels really, for me, it feels really nice and enjoyable to run in.
Yeah, because is it FF Blast Plus in it, or is it the new
Turbo, isn't it?
Okay,
it's the top stuff.
Yeah,
is it?
It would be, yeah.
No, Blast Plus, you're right.
Yeah, Blast Plus. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it is. It's good. For me, I actually found it kind of almost in between the 1 and the 2. I think it's less controlled than the 2 in a good way, in that it does release that foam a bit more and has a bit more bounce to it. I think I like it less than I liked it after the first run, I have to say. It often happens with exciting shoes like this and bouncy shoes like this. I kind of really like them at first because it's so fun to feel, but when I get into like the a grind of a training week, I almost defer to more controlled shoes. But yeah, I don't know. I've never loved Nova Blast. I've always found it good for easy runs. This does feel like it's a bit more versatile and good for speedier paces. But I think with my shuffly stride, heel strong stride, I'm never sure it's work that well for me as it might do for other people who may put a bit more force into the shoe with a more loping stride, perhaps. But yeah, I like it quite a lot still.
Okay, well, first run of that up on the channel now, and there will be a review coming up soon. Quick running fact. Quite like this one because it's so completely pointless and tenuous.
Oh, I mean, all the others have been really, really well researched, very full of points.
Look, you're not meant to comment on these. You're just meant to enjoy them. There apparently are 84 pubs lining the London Marathon route. Now, I don't know who this is for. I don't know if it's for people doing the marathon showing off. I don't know if it's for students doing a pub crawl, probably the best pub crawl of all time. And also, I don't know if that's pre-pandemic because that's probably gone down quite a bit now.
Yeah, 3 left.
3 left, yeah. But I just like the idea of the person who came up with that fact. Did he walk at the whole thing and check them all out, or did he just go on Google Maps and sort of...
Street viewed it, didn't he? Yeah.
I like to think he just tested it all out over a week. One hell of a week.
I can't decide if that sounds low or high than I'd have expected.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That sounds pretty doable.
I don't know if it's doable. It's definitely not doable. I'm doing 84.
yeah, but some of the streets are going to have loads on, aren't they? So you probably pick up 10 in about 100 metres.
Oh, it's doable. I was wondering if maybe I'd have thought there'd be more, but there are some stretches in like the Isle of Dogs where you wouldn't expect any, I guess.
Wonder if it includes gastropubs and stroke restaurants.
All bar ones?
Yeah. This fact needs a little bit more detail, I think, for clarity.
It's not like them normally. Normally they're so, on point.
Maybe, Tom, you can research it for next London Marathon.
Yeah, I'll do it. Take a tent with me. All right, okay, so that's a fantastic fact, that one. For anyone doing the London Marathon, that's a really useful bit of information for you there. All right, let's dive into some tech. Try not to get too much detail on these because we'll be covering these on the channel. Bit of an update on the Garmin Enduro 2. Anyone?
Yeah, Garmin Enduro 2, obviously the Enduro is kind of it's watch range in Garmin's collection, which is kind of aimed at kind of ultra runners, endurance kind of athletes. I think the big thing really here with this watch in terms of how it compares to the original is that you're now getting full mapping. You are getting, less so relevant, a music player, which was missing from the first one. You're getting kind of multi-band mode and kind of this new SAT IQ technology that is kind of rolled out to the Epics and the Phoenix ranges as well. And then you're obviously getting huge battery life, and I would say huge kind of tracking battery life. I think it's a little bit of a drop off in kind of day-to-day use, but ultimately you're getting something that can go longer than most other Garmin watches. It's expensive. It's very expensive. And I think if you want massive amounts of battery life, then great. The Enduro 2 would be great for you. If you can live with a little bit less and still get pretty much the same experience, then the Phoenix and the Epics are there for you in comparison. Based on my testing and time with it. So,
and we've got a full review of that up now.
Yep, full review is up on the channel now. Excellent.
Okay, and then let's do the big one, the one that everyone's here for. That's why I've left it till the end of the podcast, so people have to listen to the rest of it. The Apple Watch Ultra just released.
Nice looking watch.
Do you want to delve into that, Nick, and then we can talk about how fantastic or maybe not fantastic it is?
Yeah, it's really interesting watch. Obviously, I'm someone who has used an Apple Watch as their main running watch in the past when training very hard. I really like the Apple Watch, so I was prepared to sacrifice a little bit of battery life, a lot of battery life to use it. But I tended to have to use third-party apps like Work Outdoors to get good tracking experience, and that is still a great app option with loads of data fields and built-in maps. But Apple has now really upgraded the software on the watch. That's across all Apple Watches with the WatchOS 9 update. You get all the stats. You get lap pace at last. They call it split pace, but it's lap pace. And that's a massive update for me. So I now find that the stats and everything in the native app is great. You are now getting things like running power as well, and some basic kind of technique analysis like stride length and vertical oscillation, although all those stats seemed a bit wrong in my testing, as we talk about in our review after 1 week. And the Ultra, what you're really getting compared to the normal Apple Watch range is a bigger screen, a bigger battery. It's 2 days reliably, even with running a extra button, a lap button you can set it up to be, which is obviously massive. It's called the action button. And just generally it's a sportier Apple Watch. Ultra is not the word. I think it's not really an ultra marathon watch. It's much more, I think, going to suit runners like me, marathon runners who are going out running regularly but aren't running for horrendously long periods of time. So you can just charge it every couple of days and go and do all your marathon training. And it's the the best option yet from Apple for that, because combined with the softer updates, the harder updates make this a really solid all-round running watch that you then and then a fantastic smartwatch, which you obviously isn't the case with Garmin's and that. Garmin's and all that, I think, are still better sports watches, definitely, and the mapping in particular is a bit of a step up on the equivalent price Garmin's. But yeah, I think it's a really good move from Apple to do this. It's very expensive. It's coming in quite, it's double the price of their normal watch. I think that's a big problem because the Series 8 gets all those software updates. And if you can live without an extra day of battery and the action button and the slightly bigger screen, you're going to get more or less the same experience on that in terms of the running track capabilities, I think. But it is the sportiest Apple Watch yet. And if you are someone who wants to use an Apple Watch but doesn't want too much of a drop-off in sports tracking, it does provide that. And in day-to-day use, it's as good, I think, a lot of the time as a dedicated sports watch. You just lose out on some key features and battery life, obviously.
Anything to add, Mike?
Yeah, I think, like Nick said, I think there's definitely some shaky elements in terms of the accuracy. I've always found the heart rate monitoring on the standard kind of Apple Watch very, very solid, very, very good. And I haven't quite seen the same kind of level of accuracy for me on my runs. But I do agree that in terms of the level of metrics that you're getting in that app now, in Apple's own app, it feels more like they're making this more for runners, which I think is a positive thing. And I think it's a good starting kind of point for Apple on this front. I still think, if it was me, I would be looking at the Epix 2 and paying a little bit more, and you could probably get it for a little bit less as well. And you're getting more in terms of battery life, the support in terms of tracking, and the accuracy as well. Again, it's early doors in terms of testing. That's kind of my initial feeling really right now, that it's not quite there yet, but I see enough there to suggest maybe in a couple of iterations time, I think it's going to give something for Garmin to worry about.
It's a little bit of a frustration for me, actually, is that a lot of the changes they've made are quite minor. They're things that you'd find on very cheap sports watches. And I've been saying for years that Apple could put this in the native app very easily, and they've just done it. It's like, this is, we're 8 generations in, and you've just added some pretty basic metrics. So that is a frustration for me, because they could have been this far along the way a lot earlier. You didn't need to make the Apple Watch Ultra to make all those software changes. Like having the hardware now is a slightly upgraded hardware is nice, but really, it's a bit silly that you didn't have certain metrics available from generation 1.
I think a simple thing is being able to how you pause a workout. I think the fact that it's taken this minute to say, oh, actually, the button would be better over there, or watches have been doing that for years. So I think there's little things that they all obviously in marketing say they're amazing, but I think ultimately they've been around on other watches. But I do think that I've seen a lot here that suggests that they're on the right tracks, and I think give it a couple of versions, I think we'll be maybe talking differently about it in terms of performance overall.
I suppose I think to mention that is we look at it from a sports watch world, but compared to other smartwatches, the Apple Watch has always been a lot better at sports tracking, in my opinion, than all Android. And now it's just streets ahead. If you're just looking at native tracking, smartwatches have never done this that well. So maybe they're now just getting a lot more insight from the sports side.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, you've spent long enough talking about those. We've got 2 other watches to talk about, but I'm going to give you just about 4 sentences to cover these, Mike, because we're running out of time. So Samsung, what's Samsung got coming out?
I don't want to talk too much about it. Not great running watches. Not great running watches, ultimately. Samsung Galaxy Watch 5, very similar to Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, bar a few extra software features. So for me, not massively different. The Galaxy Watch 5 Pro is a more outdoor-centric watch. They've added mapping features, but actually they're not designed for runners. They're designed for hiking and cycling. You get a little bit more battery life on the Watch 5 Pro, but not that massive amount. It's still a good smartwatch option for Android users, but in terms of the core running tracking experience, it's still not great for me. And I would go for something like the Garmin Venue 2 in comparison, I think.
All right, so the Garmin Venue Square 2.
Yeah, and then the Garmin Venue SQ2, which is obviously the update.
Is it Square 2? Is it SQ2?
SQ2, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So this is the cheapest Garmin smartwatch you can get that has a color screen. It now has an AMOLED screen. I think more importantly, it has the UI changes that you had on the Venue 2, because I think it was a bit archaic on the first Venue SQ. It's gone up in price, which I think is a bit of a shame, because I think if it's sat at its original price, it's a really solid kind of smartwatch option. But I think Garmin maybe made a mistake there with not keeping at the price, and it would be a really strong sports tracking smartwatch, under £200, but it's just over 200 at the moment.
Cool. Okay, well, I think that's enough kit for this month. Let's stop it there. So what have we got coming up in the next few weeks, guys, after we've done our marathons?
All the marathon race vids. That's gonna be the big feature, I think, this month. And we will towards the end of next month. We're gonna do another carbon shoe vid, just our top picks, what we use, why, what are the best marathon race shoes. Having a few of us all raced a marathon in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. And I will be doing my Saucony Endorphin Pro PB video where I try. I've almost PB'd in every distance now, apart from 10k. So 5k, 10k, 10 mile. Half marathon and marathon, I'll be trying to PB in all of those, and I'll be doing a video about doing it in the Saucony and Dolphin.
Braggy video, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've still got to find a 10k. I've got Lansing 10k 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after Chicago, so I should be able to bang out a PB there. And then I will have fancy new PBs all in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, hopefully, unless Mike trips me over at Chicago. Cool. And then we've got Innovate nitrogen-infused trail shoes as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out in that. And then I'm also going to do a video on taking all of Tom's local legend spots in Brighton as well. So look out for that as well.
You don't have the sheer perseverance of that.
I'm going to move
laps of the thing.
Going to move down to Brighton for just a month and just do them all.
I'll get a few more tonight. I've got to do half marathon tonight. That's at least 14 new local legends. Okay, guys. So if you want to send us a question in, you can email us at team@theruntesters.com or comment on the video itself. And if you want to leave us any messages, you can go to The Run Testers is at Instagram, and then YouTube is The Run Testers as well, as you probably guessed based on logic. So other than that, thanks for listening or watching, and we will be back next month, end of next month. And big thank you to our sponsor for this video, Tracksmith, and we will see you soon. Catch you later. This podcast was brought to you by Tracksmith. If you want to find out more about the activations happening in London over the course of the 30th of September to the 7th of October, click in the link in the caption below. You can also find out more about getting a free singlet as part of your order from Tracksmith by clicking the other link below.